But a lot of times, you know, it's like, no, I can do it later, you know? I just gotta make time for it. And we never do, right? I just gotta make time for it. Oh, I'm really bad with time management, or you start doing it and then it starts fucking sucking and you're like 20 minutes into it, and then you go to Twitter and then you're like, okay, like you're there for 40 minutes and you're like, oh shit, I should get back to the thing. And then you start feeling bad about yourself. So, if you notice, today's title is, what's the title? Does anybody know? Are you a victim of resistance? And that is actually a very weird question, right? What kind of resistance are we talking about? Well, our type of resistance that we're talking about is art. And so I thought it would be a really interesting topic for me to touch on. Yes, are you a victim of resistance? And I'm going to be doing some more concept art, true. And then maybe some video games later. Yeah, the video games totally depend what the mood is. If I'm actually feeling tired because I woke up really early today compared to most days. But what I wanted to touch on was this great book, and it is called The War of Art. So I think a lot of us have heard The Art of War and all this, but the War of Art, I think, was written either in the late 90s or in the early 2000s. What is the War of Art? The War of Art is basically a book that is intended for people who are either artists or people who are creatives that might be struggling to essentially sit down and do the work. Essentially having the mindset change from someone who's a casual or a hobbyist into a professional. So I don't want to really go through every single point that the book makes, because in this summary it has I think 17 different points. I think I want to touch on the first 7 because I think those kind of flow nicely, and I think it's something that's super relevant that happens to all of us, right? That's all of us in most days, Orc Dork, and I think that's a really great point, and I just really wanted to speak to that, to some of us that are really looking to have either the motivation or really just struggle with why the hell is it that I'm just so lazy? You know, it's why am I so lazy? Why don't I want to do this? And art is usually treated like that for some of us, but people that actually make it into the professional sphere has a different attitude towards it. So I wanted to touch on some of the first key points of the book. I personally own the book. There is an audio book version of this book. It's actually pretty affordable. I've purchased it for many of my friends as a gift that I know that were either entrepreneurial in spirit, were also artists, or they were either really just doing it, or they were trying to look for that extra something to start. So I'm hoping that this becomes some sort or form of encouragement or motivation to some of you out there, as well as a reminder to myself. Why is it that we do what we do? You know, and I'm here sitting down. I've been consistent for the last month, and I'm pretty sure that I'm going to keep doing that. Yes, it is on Audible, so please go check it out. I don't believe that it'll be more than $20. And if it is, I'll be honest, it's totally worth it. And if you want to wait to the end of this part of this discussion for you to more or less identify, is this a type of book that I want for myself? Totally do that, right? I'm not saying you need to go purchase a book in order for you to be a professional artist. No, that is not what I'm saying. There's a lot of whole other parts to that. But what I am saying is that if you're going to be a professional, professionals have a certain mindset, right? And a lot of that mindset is not surrounded by greed or surrounded by anything outside of just yourself, right? You got 3 credits. Bam, baby. There you go. So I'm going to go ahead and read through this. Excuse me if I actually stumble. 2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours is super easy to listen to. It's actually read by the writer, the actual author. And the author, his form of art is writing, right? So that is really fucking hard. Sitting down and drawing like maybe it's because I practiced it and all that. I'd rather draw than have to sit down and write. It doesn't come naturally to me, right? So, but yeah, I'm gonna read some of through this. Sorry if I kind of stumble on the words. Sometimes I don't feel very confident in the way that I read. So I'll get in my head and then I kind of forget what I'm reading on there. So please bear with me. I'm going to give it my best shot. And let's see if we can go through this. So if there's something you truly need to be doing in your life, but you aren't, like let's say a business, changing careers, finally writing that book, what's holding you back? Is it because you're afraid? Is it because you're rationalizing? Is it because you keep procrastinating? Whatever it is, if you've ever had the pressing feeling that you're not doing your life's work, then Steven Pressfield's The War of Art is for you. In this book, we'll dive into some of Pressfield's powerful calls to action. Anyone, artists, entrepreneurs, creatives, writers, truly anyone who's got a creative craving they've left unsatisfied for too long. If you think this might be you, then it's time to break through those creative blocks and win your inner creative battles. Let's dive in. So I want to kind of just add really quickly that this book was very pivotal to the mindset that I have today as far as me coming and streaming. Before now, I barely had a library of art. And when I say now, before who I am today and where I'm sitting at, and before I lost my job, and right before all that, everything was kind of shifting over for me around December and after December. Reading this book really taught me, it's like, you know what, I know a lot of people say it and they feel like, like art shouldn't be a job. Art should only be a job if you want your job to be art. I don't think that's anything controversial. If you want art to be a pastime or you want it to be a hobby, then it should be treated as such, right? You should don't force yourself to do something you don't want, right? Is it worth trying out if you feel any of these things, right? If you feel like you've always dreamt of doing something, but something's holding you back, or are you afraid of doing it because you're afraid of the reaction, or you're afraid about, like, you start thinking about it, it's like, no, that wouldn't work out, this wouldn't work out, that wouldn't do, and this might work out, and then you get stuck in your head and then you're paralyzed because of it. Or because you're like, I'm too lazy to do X or Y, then, I think it's worth seeing, like, truly asking yourself, is this worth me going and trying out, like, doing it? And for me, I knew deep down that this is what I wanted to do. And as far as I know, my foot is on the gas. So definitely moving forward. So if you feel like that, maybe that's an indication that, maybe it's time that you start considering the things that you're doing right now. And as far as art or anything else, and maybe you want to start treating it a little bit more seriously. So it's saying here, the crucial quote from the book, creative work is a gift to the world and every being in it. Don't cheat us of your contribution. Give us what you got. And I think that's really important. It's kind of goes back to the first blog that I read this week with you guys, that we all have an inherent value inside of us, and that the art that you create has value. It is a gift to the world, right? It is a beautiful way to speak a very human language, right? So it's kind of like the idea of, like, don't die full, die empty. Like, you gave so much of yourself out to the world that, like, you have no regrets, essentially. So I'm gonna go ahead and skip to this, and so let's get to the meat of the article here. So it's saying, are you a victim of resistance? Most of us have two lives, the life we live and the unlived life within us. Between the two stand resistance. Right. Okay. So have you ever had a dream that you wanted to pursue, but didn't? Have you ever had a great idea with lots of potential, but failed to take action on making it happen? Have you ever started a new gym routine, diet, project, program of any kind, but failed to follow through on it? If you answered yes to any of the aforementioned questions, then you're the same boat as everyone else, suffering from what the author Steven Pressfield refers to as resistance. And it's really funny that we don't think about any of those things as resistance. We kind of give it the attribute of, like, again, the laziness. You rationalize it and all these different things. And so the book will go deeper into, like, what resistance is and what it means, and I'm pretty sure they're going to do the same. But, like, if you really think about it, yeah, it is. Like, I don't want to work out, right? It's like I want to be thin, but I don't want to work out. The resistance is basically like the thinking, I don't want to get sweaty, or like even when you start doing it, right? You start feeling the resistance, your muscles will weaken. You're just like you can't do shit. Like, you know what I mean? So that's a form of resistance there. So we've all been there. Resistance occurs when we try to break away from something old, a bad habit, a crappy career, in search of something new and better. Here are some examples of resistance. You want to start that business, but resistance whispers in your ear telling you you're not good enough to succeed. And that's actually not true, right? We all have steps that we kind of like grow, right? You're a victim. Well, man, if that's what you're feeling, stick through, because I think this is like gonna help you kind of figure out more or less where it is that you like to be, right? So you want to write that book, but resistance tells you that no one will want to read it. You want to go up to that girl or guy and introduce yourself, but resistance says you'll get rejected. Well, resistance is that voice that says, I can always start a new diet tomorrow, but for now, let's have that one last slice of pizza. Anything that requires any amount of willpower, discipline, or fear facing is a threat to resistance. And resistance doesn't like that very much. Resistance is hesitation. Resistance is procrastination. Resistance is the very thing that prevents us from doing what we're meant to do more than anything else. And to be honest, I can't even really add anything. This is actually very well put together, right? So resistance isn't personal either. It doesn't play favorites, and it has the power to hinder us from living the fulfilling life we desire and deserve, but only if we let it. Even the best and most experienced among us feel resistance on a regular basis. For example, Pressfield writes about how actor-entertainer Henry Fonda would throw up prior to every performance, and Fonda's been on stage several hundred times. Did resistance stop him? No. He battled with resistance prior to every single show, and he won every battle with resistance by accepting the fact that it was a natural occurrence for anyone doing anything they cared deeply for. At this point, it's likely you've made some observation about resistance. Resistance equals hesitation. Resistance equals procrastination. Resistance equals fear. All right, so those are all the different things. And I can think about so many times in life that was the situation that I was in. I've, for a long time, for some reason, have had a very hard time identifying where I'm actually feeling fear, right? And I get like jittery and it's like, no, I'm not feeling like that. Or like, I'm not fearful. You know what I mean? Or procrastination. Usually that's one thing that I become very sensitive to through the years. But a lot of times, it's like, no, I can do it later, I just got to make time for it. And we never do, right? I just got to make time for it. Oh, I'm really bad with time management, or you start doing it and then it starts fucking sucking and you're like 20 minutes into it. And then you go to Twitter and then you're like, okay, like you're there for 40 minutes and you're like, oh shit, I should get back to the thing. And then you start feeling bad about yourself, right? It's all those different things that we kind of add, but you know what? That's a form of resistance, and we deal with that every day. With everything. It's not only art, it's just with everything, right? Especially, we kind of end up shying away from the things, like they said, the things that we care about deeply, right? And in this case, I care so much about, I used to really care so much about art that it kept me back from even sharing it with anybody. Does that even make sense? I'm on Twitch now and I'm doing all these things, and but I understood that if I wanted to have a career in art and I wanted to grow as an artist, I had to get out of my comfort zone and say, it's like, how am I going to share anything with anybody if I'm not I'm not even sharing it. I'm not even showing it. I'm afraid that somebody's going to steal my design. I'm going to write, OC, please don't steal. I'm going to have to run that risk, you know? For fear of rejection is actually very real. Or it's like something that happens inside of us as far as like human beings. You know, in olden times, and even now we feel it. Rejections of certain types of group would, like back then especially, would mean death. Like, we're afraid of rejection. So this is saying, it's like, you know what? Find a way for you to maybe embrace that feeling, because there's something special inside of you, right? Just because maybe a couple people that are rejecting you for not very good reasons, like, it's keeping you from living the life that you could be living. So above all, especially that one about fear, adequately describes the various forms of resistance. So I think this is pretty awesome here. It says actionable insight. So how do we crush resistance? By keeping the following 3 things in mind. Define your dreams, whatever you want to do most in life. And that, I think, here's the thing that we kind of, I want to talk about dreams. A lot of times we have like this is the dream. The dream is all the way out here, and I can only ever have like one dream, and I can only achieve ever like one dream. And I think one thing in life that I've learned is like, it's okay for dreams to change or evolve. And you can always have more dreams after that. Like, dude, if my dream is to have a car that's $2,500, $2,500, right? There are cars that cost $10,000, $24,000. If my dream is to have a car that I paid out of my pocket with that amount of money, you know what I mean? That's a dream. If that's what I want, then that's worth doing, right? So identify the different dreams and different things that you want the most in your life. And that can be at any scope, right? So stay committed to your craft. That's probably also very hard, right? In the sense that, like, if we don't have structure, or you don't know what it is that we do, it's hard for us to stay committed if our desires are very weak. So accept the fact that resistance is something you're going to have to live with, and that the best way to prevent it from paralyzing you is to face it, feel it, and take action in spite of it. This, I think the best thing that I can compare that to is having a freaking bill, or having to do your taxes, or having to do the one thing like going to the dentist. I don't know a single human being that likes going to the dentist. But here's the thing. You have to live with the fact that some of those things are going to happen to you. You're going to have to do one of those things that you don't like to do, right? And those things are helpful usually. Some of them keep you from from going to jail and so on. But if you're putting like your dreams in that sense, it's like, I love art. I don't know. Like, I don't love sitting down for 4 hours. It makes me nervous when I post it, right? Because I think people are going to say nasty things. That fear and those things are something that you're going to have to face in order to for you to really live in that reality, right? And it doesn't mean that you're always going to be paralyzed, and doesn't mean that you're always going to be fearful, but it is worth like doing, right? Because at the end of the day, what this book is really proposing, and what I've seen a lot of very successful people say in their life, and not only like normal successful people, but like, damn, dude, you can go to Twitch and see like popular producers say, like, making that decision, doing that leap, giving themselves that much to their craft has enriched their life in so many ways. So resistance is proportionate to love. Resistance is deeply proportional to love. If you're feeling massive resistance, the good news is it means there's tremendous love there too. If you didn't love the project that is terrifying you, you wouldn't feel anything. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And I think that really brings up a point. Like, and I think I made it earlier. If something that you're doing terrifies you or scares you, it's probably because the outcome matters to you, right? The outcome of doing it really matters. So, want to know the best part about resistance? There's a simple rule of thumb to keep in mind about it. The more important a call or action is to our soul's evolution, the more resistance we will feel toward pursuing it. In other words, if quitting your job to start a new business doing what you love is super important to you, then you can bet you'll be feeling some super high resistance about doing it too. So resistance might be in the form, again, of like, hey, this is really risky. Like, what if I can't get another job? What if it fails? Right? Again, that's a feeling. That's like, indifference would be like, what kind of sandwich are you gonna get? You know what I mean? Like, I don't care. Like, hammer or tuna. Like, I don't. That's indifference, right? I know the scope is bigger, but it just kind of like to put it into that perspective, right? It also depends, I would say, like how thirsty your soul is for it, right? How thirsty is your desire? How deep is your desire for that one thing? Also can put fear in your heart, right? Or wanting to put it off or doing anything like that. So the key idea is this: resistance is a signal to get moving towards whatever you are feeling fearful or apprehensive about. The less you want to do it, the more important it is to actually pull up your socks and start taking action towards it, whatever it may mean to you. The more scared we are of work or calling, the more sure we can be that we have to do it. And actually, before I even knew this book, that was one thing. It's like, hey, if something scares me, I need to do it. And I think that's that's probably a pretty good like thing, right? Like, let's say you got to talk to your boss about something that they're pissing you off about, or it's not good. That means it's important to you, right? So choose your way of life, or something else might choose it for you. Okay, so the paradox seems to be, as Socrates demonstrated long ago, that the truly free individual is free only to the extent of his own self-mastery, while those who will not govern themselves are condemned to find masters to govern over them. Hate your boss, your job, the way you choose to live your life? Good. Because if you chose the way your life turned out up till now, you can choose to change it too. If things aren't as dandy as they should be, decide to do something about it right now. You don't have to give your boss the finger or anything. Just make yourself aware of the fact that you are in charge of your choices. Don't like your situation? Choose to change it now, not tomorrow. Do something, anything, to get going in the right direction. So, I think, again, this is like, I can't really even add anything else. This is so self-explanatory to me because I guess it's just because I just read materials like this. I was like, I sincerely believe that we all have the power to choose to do something. And if the art really matters for you, and even if you want to say like, maybe you don't want to be a pro, right? And you don't want to be a pro or anything like that, but you do want to draw more, or you do want to get better at something, then you do have the choice to seek out more information if that's what you're lacking. You do have the choice of searching for an environment that helps out with that. You have some form of agency to do that, right? To empower yourself, to get closer to what you're doing. As far as I know, most of the viewers that are on here, like, we have freedom of choice on what is it that we spend a lot of our time on as far as like our own interests. And I can understand that if you have family, if you have a sick parent, maybe you live by yourself and you work a lot of hours, there might be many reasons why you can't do this, and that's totally fine. I know the book says that you're rationalizing and so on. That's totally fine. But if it really matters to you, at some point you will find a way to even invest 30 minutes of your time on it. If you're committed enough to invest the 30 minutes. Can't invest 30 minutes? Invest 15 minutes. Can you invest it over 3 days? Do it in 3 days, in a week. Can you do it 6? Do it 6. Can you only do it once, but you can only do 1 hour? Do what is it that you need to do in order to get yourself moving. Because life doesn't stay stagnant. Your current situation isn't always the same situation. So if you want to be more artful, you want to go from a casual artist to a hobbyist artist, and you want to learn more things, you're going to have to dedicate more time to it, and you're going to have to be selective about that time. If you want to be a professional, you're going to have to spend more time on it and honing and crafting your skills in order for you to get where you need to get. Preparation, I think, is most important. And if you are doing even one thing, even if you're doing 5 minutes, look at this. I'm going to take this fucking 5 minutes, 5 fingers, 5 minutes. Even if you take 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes in a week to do the one thing that you care about, and if it's art, then you're successful in my eyes, right? That might not be like economically successful, maybe not, right? But if you didn't have 5 minutes before and you carved out 5 minutes to do the thing that you love the most, that fulfills you, God, like that's a win, you know? So redefine wins also. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to other people and where they're at today, because we don't know where they came from, right? We don't know their journey. So it says, write the first page, call the first client, design your first business plan. You are the master of your destiny. And I like that. It's super empowering. I think I try to live by that all the time. It's like we have some choices, right? So resistance plus happiness. All right. As artists and professionals, it is our obligation to enact our own internal revolution, a private resurrection inside our own skulls. In this uprising, we free ourselves from the tyranny of consumer culture. We overthrow the programming of advertising, movies, video games, magazines, TV, and MTV by which we have been hypnotized from the cradle. So here's the thing. This is how old this is. Like, I don't even think MTV's even relevant, but everything else is pretty so much like relevant, right? We unplug ourselves from the grid by recognizing that we will never cure our restlessness by contributing our disposable income to the bottom line of Bullshit Inc., but only by doing our work. All right, too many folks still believe that consumerism contributes to happiness. They believe that buying a bigger house, better car, or the latest gadget will bring them happiness they want. And though these things are great to have and even contribute to small spikes of emotional well-being, they do not contribute to lifelong fulfillment. But here's what does. Our health, which makes a lot of sense, right? There's a reason why we want to be healthy. It extends our life, and then the potential to have more meaningful things in it. The social plus emotional connections that we develop with others, which those are things that you don't put money on. You can't put money on friends and the good times that you have with them, or a meaningful family, right? Our values, our purpose, and the sense of meaning we give our lives, plus a level of contribution. And those are all things that are just intangible, right? Who are you as a person? Like, how do you working on yourself, becoming a better person and all that. And this is like, it sort of like goes beyond, right? This is just saying, kind of like making the point of like, if you really seek out the thing that makes you happy, it will pay you in other ways that you can just like not expect, right? So, and of course, our work, the joy we feel from sitting down and doing the work we have before us day after day. This can be the difference between living fully versus living empty. So 5, I think this is something that a lot of us go through, which is criticism. We'll ask for critique from our peers sometimes, and it can be very helpful, but it can also trigger something inside of us. It's okay if you're defensive. It's okay if I feel defensive, like sometimes. I really do. But we try to put ourselves beside it if you think it's really going to be helpful, right? So, but criticism is something that a lot of us maybe subconsciously try to avoid. And I know that I did for some time. You know what I mean? So, as you pursue your calling, resistance can come in the form of criticism and self-doubt. In this vein, Pressfield notes, the critic hates most that which he would have done himself if he had had the guts. So that's actually really important. If somebody's criticizing you for making a life choice, this is basically saying the critic hates most that of which he would have done himself if he had the guts. That's basically for the haters, right? Like, Don't really listen to your haters. They're probably very jealous. So, in other words, those that have realized their audience authentic selves rarely take the time to criticize others. If you find that others are criticizing you, then they're almost always doing it out of resistance. And if you find yourself criticizing others, the same applies to you. Again, these are all very high level points that the book is making. So if this is already resonating with you, please check it out. It comes in multiple forms. You can read it or you can just listen to it, right? The book definitely goes into much more depth than that. So 6, on self-doubt. The counterfeit innovator is wildly self-confident. The real one is scared to death. And I think that really happens to a lot of artists that I know. That you guys, like, we all feel we're always scared of death if this is actually good or not. Or like, should I get that job? Or should I apply for that job? Or am I good enough for that job? Like, God, like, you have no idea. So many people that I know that are insanely intelligent and talented and are not, they have a lot of self-doubt. You know what I mean? So if you find yourself asking yourself, am I really a writer? Am I really an artist? Am I really, insert a passion here? Chances are you are. So that's another really good one. And then, and this is the last one. This one's like a juicy one. So you don't always need time for healing. And this is something that I used to suffer from the most for the longest time. And I still find that, right? So what you might need instead is your work. So sometimes we convince ourselves that we need to set aside some time for rest and renewal period to getting to our work. We rationalize that we need time to heal before we can do our work. This is, of course, another form of resistance. I don't think this is exactly what the book suggests, but let's continue. Let's see. Because, again, this is a summary, so this might be what the person got from it. So Pressfield describes a story recalling his younger days as a depressed New York cab driver. So I was washed up, making $20 a night, driver, a cab, and running away full-time from doing my work. One night, alone in my $110 a month sublet, I hit bottom in terms of having to divert myself into so many phony channels so many times that I couldn't rationalize it for one more evening. I dragged out my ancient Smith Corona, dreading and I think the Smith Corona is like a typewriter, right? Dreading the experience as pointless, fruitless, and meaningless. For 2 hours, I made myself sit there, torturing out some trash that I chucked immediately into the shit can. That was enough. I put the machine away. I went back to the kitchen. In the sink sat 10 days of dishes. For some reason, I had enough excess energy that I decided to wash them. A pile of clean plates began rising in the drying rack. To my amazement, I realized that I was whistling. It hit me that I had turned a new corner. I was okay. I would be okay from here on. So I don't know exactly what the point is there, but it really just sounded like sometimes we put time into like work and we're really not satisfied with what's going on, and that we think it was like, let me get away from this and so on. And in reality, like maybe the work becomes so unlikable that you don't want to do it. Like you just want to get away from it. And in reality, like, you know what? Maybe sometimes you do need some time, right? Maybe you do need some time to take away from a certain project, but always go back, right? You're going to be okay after like it's been like a beating, right? Or if it's like been hard or it's been extremely challenging, right? So actionable insight, sometimes our work, sometimes it's a work that provides us with all the energy and inspiration we need to lead our lives the way we want to lead. There's a time for healing too, but be mindful not to use your healing, resting, break time as an excuse that's synonymous with resistance, when you really need it to do was get yourself to get up and get started with your work. Okay, so now I understand what the whole point there was. Let me read it. Take two. So, Yeah, it's basically like the resistance, that we don't want to do something and it makes us really sad. And like, he was a cab driver, he was all upset, and then finally sat down, did it, and then felt some sort of like he felt good about himself, right? And so a lot of us really, I think that we become very dispassionate with art if we are working very hard at it and we're not getting results, or we don't feel like we're growing. We think that what we just drew and did was shit, or what we designed was shit, or that like we don't, God, like when I first started back again, I sat down in front of my computer for maybe like 2 months, like just saying like, oh my God, like I suck, because I knew that I was better, right? Or you might be even saying like, what if I never thought I was good? Sitting down and doing the work is more important than avoiding not feeling like you suck. You know what I mean? It's better if you actually do it. Hopefully you're not doing it to the point where you're just being self-destructive. If that's the case, then reassess how is it that you're engaging with it. But ultimately, it's better for you to have sit down and worked on your craft, basically for your soul, than it is for you to avoid it entirely and do that one thing that really makes you upset. So you can see there's way more points here. Turn pro, be dedicated to mastery, and so many other points. If you're really feeling the concept of the book, go ahead and check it out. I didn't want to go through all of it because I thought that it was just super helpful for me when I first read it and making the decision that I wanted to go pro. I'll let you guys know when I get there, but in reality, this is a part of my step, right? One step after another, and you get there. So it's a little bit shorter than the last one, but you know what? It's all good. Now we actually can go start focusing on